Sweet, the rankings are in. Hey Bob, come take a look. We're on Warcraft logs now, man.
Do I have to?
Yeah, dude, check this out. We ranked up.
For real?
Yeah, dude, last season we were ranked 4,229 or something stupid like that. But now we went up from that to 4,212.
What?
Come on, man, check out the numbers. This looks insane. We got AJ, who's rank 54. We got Tech, who's smashing at rank 23. And hey, take a look at Mac. He just came back a little while ago, and he's already rank 6.
That's not rank. That's rank percentage.
What? Hey, it's Soul, and welcome to another episode of Warcraft Weekly, the show where I will most definitely, without a shred of conscience, humiliate my guild in the intro. In all truth, we did okay. Over the weekend, I'm going to cut together kind of the highlights and all the cool stuff and all the shenanigans that had happened in my guild's adventures in the Eternal Palace. Today's show comes thanks to the wonderful Twitch subscribers and the patrons, including some newcomers and returnees, so a big thanks to Mina, Anne, Josh, and Sean. Your support is appreciated whether you're a contributor or if you just enjoy watching. Thank you.
Okay, stop passively begging for money.
In the latest news, we've just found out that Frank Pierce, one of the 3 co-founders over at Blizzard, announced his retirement from the company after 28 years of service. Frank worked on Warcraft 2 and 3 and was an executive producer for the Burning Crusade through the Mist of Pandaria expansions. Okay, I know what comes to mind here. Keywords would include, Actabliz, Bobby Kotick, sinking ship, and so on. Let me add one more though. How about retirement age? It could be a number of things, and I'm not going to pretend to be right on any of it. I'm just going to wish Frank and his family the best of luck in the future. So one founder remains. His name is Alan Adam, who had left Blizzard just before the launch of World of Warcraft and returned in 2016. He's the same guy who made the now infamous statements on Blizzard, developing mobile games across all of its Blizzard IPs. That's a valid cause of concern for some people, but while Alan Adam is a vice president of Blizzard, he doesn't run it. That's J. Allen Brack, who lived and breathed the World of Warcraft development. So the overall impact of Frank Pierce's departure might be in its symbolism, and not the actual day-to-day operation. But let's give it a few years. What if Wyatt Chang became a future president of Blizzard Entertainment? Then we can definitely identify a pattern or two. Alrighty then, this week marks the second week of BFA Season 3, and the beginning of the Mythic World First race, and the first wing of the Raid Finder difficulty for all the real players. Because this video is being recorded on a Friday, who knows where we're at by the time you watch this, but presently we have 2 guilds tied at 6 bosses down. At the moment, it's pretty much Method versus Limit. Pieces, who came out of the Crucible of Storms raid as the resounding winner,
because no one cares about Crucible of something.
By comparison, they're pretty far behind in the running, but who knows for sure how this is going to end? Who is going to come out on top? And you heard it first here, I know the answer. Twitch. The race for World First is nothing new, and the outcome may already be decided in the minds of many. But this particular race has a bit of a twist in that it's being covered by 2 major outlets separately, Red Bull the company and Method, the #1 guild and its organization. I'll try to summarize what's going on without slanting too far in a certain direction. As we know, Method began publicly streaming its progress in the World First race of Uldir in Season 1 of this expansion. With the sponsorship of Red Bull, this was a very well-organized event with non-stop commentary from some well-known faces in the WoW community. The move was extremely successful for Method and the World of Warcraft overall. Like, imagine if the World Cup wasn't aired. Instead, it was cut and curated, and then it came out like a couple of days after the event.
That's a stupid comparison.
It is a stupid comparison, but the point is that the top guild screaming their progression live gets a lot of attention. It's been proven that the World First race is a goldmine, and it's finally been tapped. Method tried to repeat their success in Season 2 with the Battle of Dazar'alor, and was again successful, bringing in big hype and big money. Here's where things get a little bit murky. In a statement by Sko, the GM and the co-founder of Method, there was a back and forth between Method and Red Bull. Red Bull wanted to host the event themselves on their Twitch channel, which I presume is for the purpose of control and branding. Method refused because of fears of what this could one day mean, that Red Bull or some other third-party company could take over and effectively own the world first race as an event. Imagine if Red Bull was to work directly with Blizzard and make some sort of partnership with them so that only Red Bull could host commentators talking about the world first race or rehost footage from the channels of these world first streamers. What if Red Bull only brought in certain kinds of commentators based on arbitrary metrics? The concern is that Red Bull or some other third party could monopolize this event and take away something that has always been so-called grassroots and community-driven. But let's take a look at this from a different angle just for the sake of discussion. Is Method trying to protect the sanctity of the world first race as a community-owned and operated event, or are they trying to obscure their own attempts at owning the event for itself? As the most successful raiding guild in World of Warcraft historically, and the first to aggressively stream its progression, Method is synonymous with the world first race, so they have a lot of clout. They are their own brand. I might have been out of the loop, but I didn't learn until SoulSoBreezy's statement that Method had planned to include other guilds in their broadcast commentary as early as Season 2, something that both Method and Red Bull are now doing in this current season. So if that's the case, wasn't Method itself trying to own the entire race early on too? Not just by hosting itself as the top guild in town, but to also own the traffic of commentators talking about other guilds in the running. Method is trying to come from the position of defending a grassroots organization even though they have things like a management team, branding, staff, and career opportunities. I'm not attacking the fruits of their success. In fact, I'm pointing out that they're positioning themselves to be a relevant organization even if, somewhere down the line, they're no longer the top guild. And there ain't nothing wrong with that, which is, I think, the point of why Method wants to own as much of the world first event as possible. They want to become more than just the guild that gets the top spot. When your business model relies on being the best, when you stop being the best for whatever reason, then that model starts to fall apart. Method's looking towards the future when someday they might lose their standing as a top tier raid team. But even if they're not the best in show, hey, at least they own the show. I don't think there's too much to worry about at the moment though. It's clear that Method's profile still dwarfs that of the other top guilds, but from my observations, it's a little bit sad that some of the more toxic people in the scene are trying to make this into some sort of us versus them mentality and dogging on the commentators or the guilds who have partnered up with Red Bull. I think that for now, the competition between these two companies is good. Maybe there are things that they can learn off of each other. Maybe after this, Red Bull and Method can make up, and together they can make a stronger, united event that benefits both parties and guilds and, of course, the viewers. And no matter who comes out of it, I'm sure that Twitch will really enjoy the traffic. So let's move on to the what of the week, where I find the wildest quotes among the Warcraft and the gaming community, and I make a bewildered face like, and then talk about something related that's more important. Actually, this is the second what of the week, because on Monday I talked about the Battle of the Beards, as I call it.
No one is calling it that.
Well, I tried, okay? Anyway, Taliesin and Asmongold had a little spat over what should have been the subject of taking a measure of responsibility as a content creator or a streamer. It started a fierce debate that was, well, a lot of people like me got a lot of views out of it, that's great, but a lot of people got involved, taking one side, taking the other, calling everyone an idiot and then some. One person in particular jumped into the conversation with his opinions. His name is Mark Kern. I gotta admit, I'm a little bit nervous about this one. I might be punching the hornet's nest, you know what I mean? But this segment would be pretty toothless if I let stuff like this escape my notice. Mark Kern, by the way, is a video game developer. He worked on the Vanilla WoW as a team lead, or basically the game director, before leaving Blizzard to develop and produce other games. With all that said, let the what begin. I'm gonna summarize a little bit, but Mark says in a series of tweets. So I guess Taliesin and Asmongold are at it. This seems really familiar. WoW Classic takes off, and smaller E-celebs go looking to stir shit up by latching on to bigger names in drummed up fall controversy. I'm with Asmongold on this, and it's right to punch back. He goes on to summarize their back and forth in a series of 3 more tweets, and then concludes with this one. I make games. I was team lead on Vanilla WoW. It's our professional job to take criticism. We don't have to change the game. We may disagree, but it's part of the job and keep you out of the bubble. Devs need this feedback and need to grow thicker skins and use it to grow strong. What? Mark gave his 5 cents on the matter, but actually, that was just the beginning. I'm just going to limit the conversation to mostly these tweets here. This whole thing was a public feud between two well-known content creators, so anyone's free to chime in, including me, and I did. So as an observer, Mark is free to fire away, just as Taliesin was free to fire back with a not-so-subtle "F off, Mark." I noticed that many observers were quick to take Mark's side and talk Taliesin down for giving so harsh of a reply, and it was pretty harsh. But harsh happens when you happen to reach that boiling point, and Taliesin did, at least in my opinion. And believe me, some of what Taliesin said at the most heated moments of his streams, they make you go, what? Well, let's come back to here, shall we? The thing that makes me go, what? Is how Mark opened up using a few keywords and phrases, namely classic WoW, smaller e-celebs, bigger names, and fa or fake controversy. Dude, where did classic WoW all of a sudden pop in this kind of conversation? This has mostly to do with the argument of being unable or unwilling to control a toxic audience, assuming that you have one, that thinks that it can get away with saying some of this nasty stuff. Next, referring to Asmongold and Taliesin by their size or their level of fame is clearly just instigating. No, it's not just the two biggest and most outspoken WoW personalities, it's smaller e-celeb versus bigger name, setting up a confrontation between one side and the wrong side. And saying ranted stuff on the internet is not a fake controversy as Mark is trying to assert. Now, it's not new, but just because it's commonly known that there are assholes all over the internet, it doesn't mean that we ought to just throw our hands up and be like, well, it's just Twitch chat and boys will be boys. No, this kind of behavior shouldn't be normalized. Mark says it's right to punch back. He also says that it's a professional job to take criticism, that they, as in developers, need this feedback, and they need to grow thicker skins and use it to grow strong. He also says, I'm flattered I can help toxic tailspin Taliesin with his, quote, little problem in bed. Just lie back and think of WoW's team lead, my man. I'll be there for you every single time. What? Quick background on this one. During this whole rant, Taliesin used Mark as the butt of a pretty crude sex joke. So this tweet didn't come unprovoked, like the tweets that I showed you earlier. Those were pretty unprovoked. If you haven't noticed, there was just a lot of drama and a lot of crap that was slung over this weekend, but let's try to turn things in a different direction. Let's just get back to the point I'm trying to make, okay? When I think of higher profile people who work on video games, in my limited space, a couple names come to mind, like Chris Metzen, Jeff Kaplan, Samwise Didier, you know, the rocker dude, and Ian. Well, okay, let's give Ian a few more years, you know, and then we'll get back to him. Let's put Mike Morhaime in his place, all right? When I think of people in the gaming industry who I respect, I think of people like these. I think of how they conduct themselves with a certain powerful and positive energy, with a humble regard for not just the product that they put out, but the fans who play them, who love them, and who critique them. To me, these people are an inspiration to not just others who want to make video games, they're just cool people to look up to. So what are these people saying? What's Blizzard staff saying? Nothing. Not a thing. I think that's the common sense call to make, because if they did, then they would contaminate this conversation even more. Mark Kern has an interesting portfolio that you can look up on articles around the internet, like people talk about him. And I'm not here to attack or tear down the man's accomplishments. In fact, I appreciate that he continues to talk about WoW Classic and continue to share his experience when he was working on a vanilla WoW. This is like 15 years later. But specific to here, in the debate that went on this week, he took sides in a tone and candor that I find to be unprofessional, to say the least. It's not something I would expect from someone who labels himself as a team lead, producer, game designer, CEO, and writer. His participation in this didn't contribute anything constructive at all. It didn't help the debate move along or turn it into something that people can really take home. He just stoked the fires of toxicity. As a creator of online games meant to bring people together, I can't respect the actions of a developer like Mark, or any developer, or any person who uses their recognition on the internet for something like this. Like, what? So I said my piece, and we'll see what kind of pie gets flung in my face, but let's move on to the last thing of the day, which is what Taliesin wanted to talk about from this weekend, minus all the toxicity and the drama. This whole idea of so-called streamer responsibility left me fascinated. You could say that Taliesin succeeded at getting my interest at the cost of, a few subscribers. So, fans of Taliesin and Nevitel, let's see if I can help this conversation along. I encourage you to carefully consider this probably garbage that I have to say, but hey, if you feel like it, bookmark this segment and ask him or whoever to watch it. Live, not live, doesn't matter. Maybe he's already talked this angle, or maybe this will help him refine his opinions. I mean, I direct message him myself, but it's 2019. Who does that anymore? And he's part of the Alliance, so,
Hey, screw you.
Bleh. Taliesin attempted to spark a discussion on the responsibility streamers and content creators have when it comes to the conduct of their fans. I don't think that was the right approach, because there's a keyword there that makes even someone like me, who has just a fraction of his following, make me be like, ugh. And that's responsibility. Ugh. Responsibility in this context means that to some degree, I am liable for the actions of people who I don't know directly, who I don't employ, who I don't have any sort of contract with. I don't want to be held responsible for the state of my workspace, let alone what my own fans do when they kind of represent me. I mean, I feel awkward just saying that I have fans.
Okay, so stop lying to yourself.
Ouch. So I'm going to take this talking point here and throw it out. Let's try this again in a way that is more digestible and, more importantly, already written out, so that way I don't make an ass of myself over the weekend. Role models, heroes, people we look up to, who inspire us. They come in all sorts of different forms, and I already named a few. Some of the biggest names in Blizzard help to create entire worlds, entire universes, while uniting players under very simple phrases like, be good to each other, play nice, and play fair. From musical artists to actors and actresses to athletes, from Sports Ball A to Sports Ball Z to fictional characters who are larger than life. These all set an example to follow. To our parents, to our teachers, or that really cool friend with the dope ass hair.
Hey, thanks.
And more recently, to content creators and streamers. To many, and I'm kind of lumping myself in there really loosely, to many we're just another quickly digested form of entertainment. We're a video to take up the toilet time, or another stream to flip through for a momentary distraction, or we can be a source for guides or news. But to a few, sometimes what we do and what we produce strikes a chord with people, and it leaves an impression after the video stops, after the broadcast is over. Our words echo, and in a way we inspire through example. Like, wow, that one guy, he's not very attractive at all, but he knows his stuff. Or in another case, I follow that channel since they had less than 100 subscribers, but look at them now. Or, man, that person totally got me to play a protection paladin, and now I totally love it. Or in another case, it could be like, that person says what I'm thinking so well. They must really understand me. And there's a connection made there. By our nature, as someone with a public presence, the way that we act and conduct ourselves can and will leave lasting effects on some people if they follow us long enough, if they like us long enough. If some impressionable viewer watches the streamer laugh at XYZ something, and the rest of the chat happens to laugh with them, That sends a message to the viewer. It reinforces that influence. And thanks to platforms like YouTube and Twitch, the biggest streamers and content creators are as accessible as their own restrictions allow them to be. And if you miss their live stuff, then you could always go back and catch a VOD. I'm trying to say that the biggest and most dedicated fans of these big streams and channels, they look up to these people. Somewhere out there are people who absolutely idolize Asmongold for his admirable qualities. He has a huge following. He has an abrasive but very sharp personality. He's knowledgeable. He's able to take care of his family, get a girlfriend, and make a living doing things that he likes doing. Playing video games, holding events with friends and what have you, and sometimes watching videos and commenting on them. They want to emulate him. They want to be like him. Because in being like him, it's kind of like emulating that measure of what a successful person is. We see this sort of connection all over the place. People looking up to their heroes and role models, more than willing to follow them anywhere, willing to defend them, because, like Asmongold said, you gotta punch back. It's part of our nature to defend who or what you believe in when the haters come after you. And throughout human history, we've spilled blood over this very premise. But let's walk it back. I think I'm getting a bit too serious here. Does influence make a streamer liable for the actions that their viewers take? As long as the rules and laws are obeyed in part of the streamer or content creator, then no, of course not. That's why the most accurate term that these corporate people have thought of to refer to us is influencer. What a gross word. Now, I may not be able to fully understand the situation from my vantage point, but maybe when you get big, like really big, you probably start losing perspective too, or you got to sit down and kind of rethink. It feels like the people who run these big channels and have these huge followings ought to look inward and admit something to themselves. You are a role model. People look up to you, whether you're playing your alter ego, if you're speaking from the heart, or if you're tweeting some garbage. I get that some channels are based on a persona that's less than civil. They rage out, they play the heel, they start drama that could be real or fabricated. But there are fans out there who don't know the difference, and they accept this behavior as normal. We can't control what our viewers do, and we can't control whether our viewers decide to idolize or emulate us. But we also can't deny that it happens, and from there, we can decide what example it is that we want to set. And that's the show. This was a really light week on actual WoW content. I'm aware of that, and I absolutely apologize for it. As long as less dramatic stuff happens, though, you can count on some less serious content next week, like a top 10 of something, and maybe me talking a little bit more on why I just don't like the old gods as a narrative device. Gosh, they suck. But I want to thank all of you for coming, and if you're new to the channel, hey, consider subscribing to the channel so I can keep giving you more of this and all things Warcraft. Don't forget to like the video, and I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.